Hello and welcome to the Sandro Forte podcast. Over the many years I've been running a business, I've met many successful people, entrepreneurs, sports stars, celebrities, and dare I say, even royalty. So what makes a person successful? Do we know what success is? And the all-important question, can we create success for ourselves? This podcast series invites a diverse group of people to share their insights, their wisdom, and the things they've learned along the way. There's something about family businesses that seems very wholesome and often makes people feel like they're in safer hands. Helen Gibson is the MD of Agencia, the company her dad set up in 1997, which has won the award for Best Small Business in the UK in 2017. Since the sad loss of her father, Helen, in the role of managing director, has taken the business to new heights. She's here to explain today how she's managed to catapult the business onto a global platform and to tell us more about how her work has developed communities and changed lives along the way. Wow, this is going to be great, Helen. I'm so looking forward to this. We had a lovely chat yesterday in anticipation of this today. So
we did.
Thank you for finding the time, first of all. Let's start right the way back in the beginning, your early life, because there's a lot of people that, with respect, may not have heard about you, but we're going to find out all about you in a second. Helen's early life, where did it all start?
That's a good place to start, isn't it? Start at the beginning.
Exactly.
Well, thanks very much. I guess it all began in East Yorkshire. I was born in Beverley, so good place to start off. Born to mum and dad, who met at Hull University. Dad from Surbiton in Surrey, and mum from Ilkley in West Yorkshire. So that's where it all began. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. Not that we're kids anymore, but so there's 2 girls, 2 boys, or now 2 women and 2 men. So that's where it all began, and that's 40 years ago.
Wow. Well, we already have a lot in common, Helen, because you won't know this, but I'm the oldest of a great number of siblings. And I, for a very short space of time, used to live in Hull. So,
really? Right.
We'll talk about that separately. What's it like being the oldest, Helen? First of all,
I think pros and cons. I guess a mixed experience, but overall good. I mean, obviously aware of sort of leading. And trying, I guess, to set a fine example in terms of the other kids. But yeah, I was the one that would go first, whereas my youngest brother obviously would probably say he had a slightly easier ride by the time it got to number 4.
I think I share your view. Mixed bag. You know, you kind of carry the can, you get the blame for everything, but it's also quite nice to be the responsible one. I think my siblings would disagree because they don't think I'm responsible at all. But I think just carrying the weight of expectation is quite nice in some ways. What about your career path before Agencia? Because we'll talk about how you came into the family business in a moment. But what happened before Agencia, before that moment when you stepped into that family business?
Oh, well, yeah. I had a few jobs, and I was very keen, although I'd always had an interest in joining my dad and his company and been fascinated by that. I was always keen to do other things and be clear that if I was ever going to get involved in our company, I'd be doing so on the basis of having my own experience, my own credentials, contacts, etc., rather than just being, oh, she's the boss's daughter. So I worked quite hard to earn my stripes, for want of a better word. I started off as a psychology teacher, so I taught A-level psychology at a number of schools across Yorkshire. Got into educational consultancy after that in Manchester. Then won a scholarship to do an MBA at Hull University, so went back home to be able to do that. And off the back of the MBA, then got a job at the Cabinet Office. So moved to London and had a couple of years at the Cabinet Office. And beyond that, got a job working with a company called PA Consulting, and that was specifically in public sector government practice. So that was real exposure to all sorts of different clients and projects, and that was all good. And at that point, I felt I'd got sufficient sort of experience and stripes, as I say, to be able to get involved in our company in a way which would be genuine and make a real contribution based on what I could offer.
When did you, was there an epiphany? Was there a moment when you thought, right, I'd like to follow in my dad's footsteps, albeit to become my own person and run the business in the way that I would like to do? I'm really interested to hear you say that you work really hard to earn your stripes, because part of the demographic, part of the audience, and it's a great many people now who listen to this podcast, thankfully, are younger people, Helen, who perhaps, and I say this with no disrespect to any of them, probably find life a little bit too easy at times and don't necessarily apply themselves in the way that you did. What was that moment when you thought, I really have got my eye on the business. I see, I'm happy to step away from perhaps following a different career path. Was there a moment, or had you always had your eye? Was that part of the long-term plan, or did it just kind of happen by accident?
I'd say it's sort of half and half by accident and by design. By the time Dad set up the company, I was going into my first year at university. So it was at that stage where I was just starting to think about things really beyond school and sixth form. So at that stage, right from the beginning, obviously taking an interest in what Dad was doing and found it fascinating. So I think, right from the word go in terms of the company being there and Dad doing that, it made me think, that's interesting and more interesting than so many other things because of the variety and the fact that it was ours or his in terms of that ownership. Part sort of design and part accident, I guess, because it'd been there for quite a long time. But then I designed it along the way to put myself in the best possible position to, not only get a job, but to be able to lead it in years to come if that was considered to be a good idea, both by the business, but also for me personally. And I think right from the get-go, we had a very clear strategy, Dad and I, in terms of succession planning. And we actually had a 5-year succession plan between us from when I came in to when I was joint managing director with him first of all. So a very clear plan in that sense, but always with an escape route. Tell
us then, Helen, tell us about the business, because there will be people that will, once they hear this podcast and they get all your details at the end, to save them scrambling around looking on the internet now for your details. What exactly is the business?
Okay, so the business is called Agencia, and our purpose, our mission is transforming lives, and we're doing that in two predominant ways. One is health and social care work, and the other is through justice, policing and security work. And the work that we're doing is across the UK, but a lot that's international as well. So we're working in places in the Balkans, in the Caribbean, in Africa, so all over the place, but many clients that are UK based as well. And I guess in terms of at the heart of everything we're doing, it's trying to transform organisations, trying to transform the teams that we're working with, and ultimately then obviously having an impact on communities, both here and abroad. So quite a mixture of clients, everything from your single GP practice, we're working with hundreds of those at the moment, through to the EU and other foreign governments, as well as our own. So quite a spectrum of different clients and pieces of work that we're doing. But through the heart of everything that we're doing, it's trying to genuinely, and it always sounds cheesy, but genuinely trying to actually do work that is really worthwhile and leaves things in a better position than when we first came in. And I think that legacy is absolutely critical to how we choose the work that we actually want to do and don't do.
Well, you say that sound cheesy, but from everything I've heard about you, since you have been mentioned by a number of people, I can certainly endorse the fact that everything you do is wholesome and genuine and exactly as you described. So now I come from a family business as well, and I remember at the age of 13 taking over my father's business. He passed away when I was very young, and helping my aunt for a number of years. So I kind of got thrust into the family business. And I remember loads of advantages of being involved in a family business, but I could also remember some disadvantages. In your experience, kind of what are the pros and cons for anyone considering, following in a sibling's footsteps or a parent's footsteps? In your experience, what are the things to consider?
I mean, obviously, everyone and every business is different. But for me, I think some of the things that have shone through in terms of being a positive, I mean, I wouldn't have got involved at all if it hadn't been for the fact that I loved Dad and I loved the idea of spending time with him. And again, now, one of my sisters got involved in the business about 3 years ago, just over 3 years ago. And again, one of the best things about being in this business is that we're doing it together and spending our time together. And that's fantastic. I think another real kind of pro is that it is our own and we can really make it our own. And certainly for us, it's not just the immediate family that feel that they're part of the family. It's very much the broader team and some of our clients and partners. It becomes a pretty close relationship that perhaps wouldn't be the case if it wasn't an independent family business. So I think that really is quite special and attracts a lot of people and interest because it is that little bit different. On the downside, obviously, it's never just business. It's always personal as well. And again, a responsibility in terms of, I could never fill Dad's shoes or even try really to follow in his footsteps. And in fact, I've been very clear that I've got very different shoes to what he would have worn. But that doesn't mean that they're not equally good shoes. But I think there is that sort of sense of wanting to look after what the family have set up and also wanting to look forward in terms of being able to provide for that next generation, should that be something that the next generation would want to get involved in.
And I suppose there's always that conundrum about whether you carry on doing something that seems to be working quite well. In your particular case, I wouldn't say you moved away from the way your dad had run the business, but clearly wanted to create your own identity, do the way that you felt. Mindful of the legacy that he'd created. Was that something that was always in your mind? Could you see ways to improve the business? Clearly, the answer to that must be yes, because of what you've done. But is there a temptation to just keep doing it the way it's always been done, or is the sense that you need to reinvent yourself as a business on a fairly regular basis? Was that a stronger pull for you?
Again, I'd probably say half and half. There was an awful lot that was wonderful about the business when I came in 10 years ago. And we've tried very hard to retain all that's good and, the values, the style, all of that is absolutely rock solid. but at the same time, of course, and no more than, we look at the situation at the moment in terms of having to absolutely transform to make sure that we can deliver via remote systems and respond and make sure that we continue to be relevant in the situation we find ourselves in right now. So I think it's a real double act of both retaining or doing our utmost to retain all that's good about the history, whilst very much moving forward and trying to future-proof and being one step ahead of the game and continuing to develop and grow and move forward as best we possibly can.
I can see why you're so successful, Helen. That's a very good and very sound philosophy to have. Now, obviously, you mentioned earlier, the business is the business is comprised of a team of industry experts, emphasis on health, social care, justice, policing, security, all those things that you mentioned.
Yeah,
obviously, that is a very broad spectrum. How does the company work across so many different disciplines? And are there any specific things that you can tell us about that you do? Because earlier you kind of gave us a broad sense of what you did. Specifically, what kind of things do you do to transform people and business?
Yeah, a whole range of examples, but I guess we've seen one of our strengths as being the fact that we've got that multidisciplinary team available, and for many of our clients, some will come just wanting one very small specific niche area of expertise, whatever that might be. It might be, I don't know, cybercrime in Barbados, or it's opioid addiction in Scunthorpe, or whatever it might be, and many others in between. But many of our projects, with it being transformation at the heart, involve the need for that broader team, and that's where we can really help. So yes, we've got that niche expertise, but we've also got the ability to pull together that multidisciplinary team, which is pretty attractive. In terms of specifics, when you say how we actually sort of having an impact, I think just a couple of examples. One might be, for example, we've set up from scratch a probation service in Macedonia. So Macedonia now have probation, which they didn't have before. Other things that we're doing, we've set up something called Primary Care Direct, and that is effectively a one-stop shop to support doctors, dentists and pharmacists, and we're supporting over 300 GP practices at the moment across the UK, so we're right on the front line with that. We're doing work in the Balkans, which is judicial reform work, so helping a whole range of organisations to build their capacity and their skills. So it is a real mixture, but that just gives you a flavour of some of the things that we're doing.
Amazing. Since you run such a successful business and you've grown the business significantly since you took over from your dad, that must
the help of the team. It's not all me.
I know, but that must by definition make you quite a good leader. What therefore, Helen, makes a good leader, do you think? What makes a good boss? I'm asking you to talk about yourself now, which I know you're going to find difficult, but just generically, based on all of the experience you've gained so far, working with other leaders of industry across many different countries, what makes a good leader of people?
I think what I've always tried to do is just bearing in mind some of the not so good bosses I might have encountered previously, but also those ones that have really stood out. I've tried to think, well, actually what made the difference to me, and how can we do our very best to support people, encourage people, look after them. I'm a big believer in trying to create a space where people can feel free to be themselves, to do their thing, use their creative flair. So I see my job as really looking after people and doing the very best that I can to support people and back them up and be that sort of cheerleader and encourager.
Very good. How much, sounds like a ridiculous question to ask you, but
no, go on.
How much satisfaction do you get from making such a difference to people's lives? I mean, a probation service, as you say, opioid addiction in Scunthorpe, or whatever it is. And let's be clear, Scunthorpe is not full of opioid addicted individuals. Let's be very clear about that. It's just
no.
But clearly you get a lot of satisfaction from what you do. I mean, that's probably understating it. Is that part of the attraction?
Yeah.
You?
Absolutely. And not just for me, for the team as well. And I've always said it, but I think, again, kind of losing Dad has made not only me, but all of us acutely aware that time is so precious, and therefore we want to spend our time well. Therefore it's absolutely important that what we're doing is worthwhile and that we believe in it, and that legacy is the right legacy. It's the absolute driver and a relentless focus on that, transforming lives, so that, if I disappeared tomorrow or whatever, you think, well, that was time well spent.
Now, you strike me, we've spoken before this, Helen, you strike me as an altogether very lovely lady who doesn't appear on the face of it, again, I say this with respect, you don't appear to be, tunnel vision driven, knock everyone out of your way on the path to success. You seem like a very grounded, very humble, modest lady who's done fantastically well. How do you continue to do all that you do whilst also being really nice? And I don't want nice to be that kind of throwaway word, because there's a lot of people that think in order to achieve success, they have to be uncompromising, and because we have all experienced the really bad boss in the past. Can you be successful and nice at the same time?
I think absolutely yes, and I actually think it pays dividend to be nice and be kind and be an encourager. Personally, I couldn't try to be anything else. And I know what you mean in terms of there are all these sort of images of what a boss might look like, or a business owner, or but to try to be anything other than oneself, whatever that is, will be very difficult and instantly recognisable and seen through, I think. So for me, and I hope with our team as well, we are ourselves, and most people appreciate that and respond very well to it. I
think that's a very good answer. What you're saying to me is just be the genuine version of yourself, and that's definitely the way you come across. So I'm going to ask you a very big question now. There's a lot of you work in a business which is all about change, but I know that you focus a lot on sustainable change. Now, there's loads and loads of people listening, Helen, that are going through a period of change in their life, not least partly forced upon them because of all that's been going on in the world in recent months. Change is one thing. I mean, we can talk to all kinds of people about change, but you focus on sustainable change, and there is a massive difference between change and sustainable change. How exactly do you get people to sustain a transition from one place to another, to maintain motivation or focus? Because that's almost as important as the change itself, is to keep that momentum and that forward direction going. How exactly do you achieve that sustainable change in the people you work with?
And it's a number of ways, but I think it's about impact in terms of you're not just coming in with a process-driven change or a new system change. The way that we're working is very much alongside people. So yes, there might be a system change or a process change or multiple other changes, but all of that we're doing working very much with people, and that is an effective way to do it. And in doing that, what we're looking to do is affect behaviour change, and those behaviour changes are then likely to be, or more likely to be, sustainable in the longer term. So I think that's one thing. It's behaviour change, which takes time. Of course, it's not an overnight thing, but it's where it's possible to embed it and really sort of see the lasting benefit. I think then there's a number of other things, and again, each situation and organisation is different. But there'll be things that we do in terms of staying in touch with people, for example, after the project is completed. So it's not a sort of hit and run job, for want of a better word. We're looking for jobs that are relationships and longer term things, of which many of our clients are longer term relationships and people that come back again and again, because that is working. It's a genuine change, rather than a short-lived change.
You've, not only do you strike me as being a very nice lady, as I've mentioned before, but you're obviously very bright as well. You've been a Justice of the Peace, you've worked at the Cabinet Office, you're a teacher, and now you've taken over the family business. Have you ever encountered along the way, with all of those different positions of responsibility that you've held, have you ever encountered any kind of inequality? And I ask you this question for the benefit of all the ladies out there who are, probably got their eye on career advancement and maybe worry about these, the stereotypical roadblocks to inequality in the workplace. Have you ever encountered that personally? And if you have, how did you overcome it?
I mean, being perfectly honest, I don't feel I've really encountered that, and I don't know whether I've just been fortunate, lucky, or whether it's gone over my head, or but I haven't actually really ever felt that, and I'd actually say the opposite in terms of in many ways I feel sometimes it's been or often an advantage to be female in what are often male-dominated situations. Not always, but quite often. And not always, but mostly, I felt that people have responded well to me and my style and approach. I think, if anything, in terms of inequality, if you like, on a different angle, I'd say sometimes in terms of age. At times, I think, I'm younger than some of the people that are in that situation. So perhaps at times I felt that. But yeah, not really in terms of gender.
Well, great. That's great to hear. I asked you the question, and that will reassure both men and women listening. So, how do we find out more about you? I mean, clearly, Agencia has a website presence.
Yeah.
Are you a social media kind of lady? Do you put it out there on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or heaven knows what else?
Yeah. I mean, the website obviously is there. We have a company LinkedIn and Twitter page, and also I have my own in terms of LinkedIn and Twitter. So, and the other thing is, of course, email, which is readily available in terms of the address on the website. So very happy to take emails or phone calls.
Oh goodness, we almost forgot that there was something called a phone, didn't we? In all that's been going on that
old-fashioned on the blower.
Yeah, get on the blower and have a conversation. Absolutely.
Pick up the phone. Yeah.
The last question for you today, Helen, is let's put you in a position where you're having a conversation with either a younger version of yourself or a young person, maybe a son or a daughter. Maybe thinking back to the imaginary conversation you might have had with your dad when all that time ago you wanted the answer to the question that we all have for ourselves, which is, trying to cut through this mass of something called life, all the obstacles and challenges along the way. If you could share with us today one pearl of wisdom, something that, I don't know, maybe encapsulated everything you've learned in life and business so far with all that vast experience that you've shared so openly, what would that one bit of advice that would stand out from everything else, what would it be?
It would be keep the faith. In the words of Bon Jovi and many others, keep the faith, both personally and business-wise, because it's going to be tough. If it was easy, then everyone would do it. Yeah. But actually, try not to worry too much. Easier said than done, I know. But keep the faith, because it'll probably be all right in the end.
That is a very good way of summing up today's conversation. And I'm delighted that it's been a conversation, because when we chatted yesterday, I said, right, we're just going to imagine we're down the pub having a glass of wine and a good old chat.
There's no wine here, though, is there?
There isn't. I'm sorry. We could have organised that. So my bad. I know I've got a glass of water. But Helen Gibson, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a really fascinating insight into, we haven't had that many podcast guests who have actually followed in a parent's footsteps and taken the business to a new level. So that will really resonate with a lot of people today. So thank you for being so lovely, so transparent, but so informative as well. It's been great speaking to you.
Oh, well, it's an absolute pleasure, and I've really enjoyed it. Great speaking to you too.
And since we're geographically not so far away, we will have to have that glass of wine in the not too distant future. Yeah. I've got a car. I'll come to you. It's no problem.
All right, we'll see you there.
Helen, thank you very much indeed.
Bye, Sandro. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us on the Sandro Forte podcast today. Helen Gibson, what a really, really fantastically inspiring lady. Every week we've got a new guest joining us, as you know by now, to share their own insights into achieving success or overcoming life's challenges. Please make sure you subscribe. Follow us on social media, Sandro's Podcast, as always. Same on all channels. Email, hello@sandrospodcast.com. Do connect with me, Sandro Forte. I will be connecting with Helen. I think I already have, actually. And it's the real Sandro Forte on Instagram, Sandro Forte everywhere else. And leave those reviews on iTunes, please. Really important. And remember, you could be automatically entered into a draw to win one of the prizes donated by a guest of the Sandro Forte podcast. Until I share my time with another guest this time next week, goodbye for now. Have a great week.